So Amazon just released the latest quarterly earnings. I think it's time for me to do an update of Amazon versus Tesla results. Let's dive into it. As you can see here, this is the year-to-date stock performance of Tesla versus Amazon. Tesla has dropped about 45% and Amazon has dropped about 42%. This is an interesting chart. It's showing the sales growth for the most recent quarter for Tesla versus the other FANG stocks. As you can see, Tesla has grown by 56% over the past 1 year versus the other FANG stocks that grow between 8 to 15%, and Meta result actually dropped by 4%. So I did a lengthy videos few weeks ago to show the Amazon versus Tesla. You can watch the long videos if you are interested. So my thesis back then, there was basically 2 points. The first point is that AWS alone is worth as much as Tesla. And the second point is that Amazon e-commerce business and other segments are facing headwinds now, which will eventually recover. So basically, AWS here is already worth as much as Tesla, and the rest of the business here, these are the business that earn low margin and they contribute just a small proportions of the Amazon market cap right now. Let's look at the details of the results. So this is AWS quarterly revenue. As you can see, revenue growth very smoothly, and the recent quarters, they are still growing, but the growth has slowed down. For Tesla quarterly revenue, you can see that Q2 result isn't that good because of the lockdown in Shanghai, and Q3 they have a very good results. And if we put the quarterly revenues of AWS versus Tesla, you can see that Q2 Tesla result is behind AWS, but Q3 it already surpassed AWS. Now AWS operating income. As you can see, AWS operating income has slowed down for 2 quarters, and that's the reason of the stock price drop. For Tesla, you can see that the operating income has increased quite significantly since Q2. This is because of the healthy growth rate and also improvement in the operating margin. So again, operating income comparison side by side. As you can see here, actually AWS operating income is still higher than Tesla. But Tesla operating income has been growing quite fast. They have been closing the gap. So this chart is showing the growth rate between AWS and Tesla. It has been many quarters that Tesla growth rate is above the AWS. And if we look at the recent quarters, AWS growth rate has been slowing down, whereas for Tesla, the growth rate is still sustained at a very high level. So now operating margin. AWS operating margin has been consistently above Tesla, and again Tesla operating margin has been closing the gap. So this table is showing the overall comparison between Amazon and Tesla. So if you look at the operating income alone, their operating income in the past 12 months is about the same now. And if you look at their market cap, Amazon is still higher than Tesla. And if you take the ratio of market cap versus operating income, is something like a PE ratio, the Amazon's PE ratio will be much higher than Tesla. It doesn't make sense, right? So what I'm doing here is I break down the Amazon result into 2 segments, which is the AWS and all the other segments, which is mainly the e-commerce business. So you can see that actually the operating income of Amazon, which is very low, is all because of the e-commerce business, whereas the AWS business is actually doing quite well. And the next question is, why would I say the AWS alone is worth as much as Tesla? So if you look at the growth rate, Tesla growth rate is about double of AWS. But if you look at the operating income of AWS is actually almost double of Tesla. So for Tesla, the market cap is 682 billions. So if I just apply a constant PEG ratio, I can derive the market cap for AWS, which is about $621 billion. Next, I just subtract the value of AWS from Amazon and I get $319 billion for all the other segments. So I include 3 more columns here. The implied PE, which is about PEG ratio of 1, is shown here. So if we work backward and derive the implied margin, we get something about 6.1% margin for the e-commerce segment. Then from the 6.1% margin and multiply by the revenue, what it means is that the implied operating income should be about $26 billion. So what it means is that as long as the e-commerce business is able to earn about 6% margin, then 319 billion makes sense because we are only apply a very low PE ratio, which is about 12 for a business that is not growing very fast. So in order to make sense of the valuation of these 2 companies, there are a couple of points. First one is that you look at the operating margin for Tesla, which is about 16.5% now. This margin is still increasing, and if you assume that the margin can increase to about, let's say, 30%, of course, the valuations of Tesla should be much higher. Secondly, If we look at the e-commerce business, currently the margin is very low at about negative 2.3%, and this is because of the overcapacity problem that Amazon is facing now. Can they actually increase their margin by doing cost cutting and improve it to 6.1% over the next couple of years? This one we still don't know, and we still need to monitor their progress. If we look at the margins of Walmart business, their past margins range between 4% to 6%. So come back to this, 6.1% is not like a crazy margin assumptions. But if we look at the past margin of e-commerce business, they never exceed 3%. This is because Amazon keep investing into technology with result in lower margin. And then lastly, current Tesla is growing at 56%, but this growth rate might slow down in the future. For example, recently they just cut the cost of their cars in China. Once the base increased to a sizable number, it's harder to grow at such a high rate in the future. So after all this analysis, I just want to conclude that the valuations of these two companies are fair. It is not as crazy as looking at this table and say that Amazon, even though they are growing at 15% and their operating income is even lower than Tesla, if we just focus on the recent quarters and we say that it is crazy valuations. In my opinion, it is not that crazy. To me, this relative valuation is quite fair. So that's all for this video, and thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye!